Now open the fridge. What's inside? Maybe a can of soda, yesterday's pizza, yogurt, or perhaps a piece of fruit that flew in from the other side of the world. Now think about this. In the eyes of your ancestors, none of these would even have counted as food. So what did they really eat? When you hear the answer, you'll probably want to push your plate aside, because evidence found in caves takes human history to a much darker place than we realize. But first, we need to go back to the very beginning, about 3 million years ago. Bone crushers. Our ancestors were not hunters. They were scavengers. When a lion hunted an antelope on the African savanna, it would first eat the best parts itself, the muscle meat, the liver, the heart. Then the hyenas would come and strip away the ribs, the hide, and the small bones. By the time our ancestors arrived on the scene, the only thing left were the thick leg bones that even a hyena's jaws couldn't break. This is exactly where our ancestors' greatest advantage came into play, their hands. Using simple tools carved from stone, they could break these bones apart. What emerged from inside was a gray, slippery, fat-filled substance, bone marrow. They would scrape it out with their fingers and eat it raw. It may seem disgusting to us today, but back then it was a feast, because no other animal could open that bone, only they could. Skulls met the same fate. A broken skull contains nearly half a kilo of pure fat, and fat is the most calorie-dense food found in nature. For an ancestor scraping by on meager rations, this was a true treasure. This is exactly why we're still so vulnerable to fatty foods today. Our bodies still remember those days. Insects were also a staple of the diet. Termites, larvae white maggots as thick as a thumb. They crunched like shrimp and weren't a last resort. On the contrary, they were a full-fledged meal. This way of life continued, unchanged for millions of years, but what happened next was a transformation far greater than you might imagine. The revolution brought by far the oldest evidence of fire discovered by humankind was found in Wonderwerk Cave in South Africa. It is approximately 1 million years old. With fire came cooking, and was essentially a form of pre-digestion. Raw meat and raw plants require the stomach to work for hours. Cooked food, on the other hand, is already partially broken down. The body expends less energy and can extract more calories from each bite. Scientists believe that as our ancestors began cooking, their intestines shrank. The enormous amount of energy freed up by this reduction was directed toward a single organ, the brain. This organ, which makes up only 2% of body weight, consumes 20% of daily energy. You can't power such a machine with raw leaves and termites. It requires cooked, fat food. In short, cooking gave us our brains, and our brains took care of the rest. The dietary explosion 100,000 years ago, our ancestors already looked very much like they do today, and they ate everything they could find. Hunter dig up mammoths, bison, wild horses, and reindeer on the plains. Fish and shellfish in rivers and along coastlines. Wild grains, roots, fruits, and mushrooms from the ground. Eggs stolen from nests. And above all, honey. The Hadza tribe in Tanzania still demonstrates today, through their way of life, how pre-agricultural humans fed themselves. About 15% of their calories come from wild honey. They climb dangerous trees, get stung hundreds of times, but they keep going, because nothing in nature offers so many calories in a single bite. And here we encounter a strange reality. That same hunger still lives within us. Today, sugar. The reason the brain is so addicted to sugar is that, for hundreds of thousands of years, sugar provided you with two things at once: instant energy and fat to be stored for future hunger. That fat was the only thing that kept you alive during times of scarcity. Dripping honeycomb was the richest meal your ancestors ever saw. That program is still running inside you. Your body can't tell the difference between honey from a tree and a chocolate-covered wafer from the grocery store. The modern food industry has taken that ancient signal and turned it into a business. Soda, candy, cornflakes, sauces, even most bread. Nearly all processed foods on Earth are essentially sugar in disguise. That's why you can't give it up. Your body is still preparing for the next famine. The call of meat sugar wasn't the only addiction. A mammoth carcass could feed a tribe for weeks. A single big game kill saved Hundreds of hours that would otherwise have been spent gathering fruit or digging up roots. That saved time was channeled into raising children, developing tools, and telling stories around the fire. This is the root of why we're still so drawn to protein today. Every craving stems from a legacy that kept our ancestors alive. Hard truth to accept, but there's one craving that's much harder to accept. In Gough's cave in England, researchers discovered human bones dating back approximately 14,700 years, and these bones told a story that no one wanted to hear. The skulls had been meticulously cleaned with stone tools. The facial and lower sections had been carefully removed. The only thing left was the upper section, with its edges carefully shaped, almost transformed into a bowl. The long bones, meanwhile, had been broken in the same way our ancestors broke antelope bones to extract the marrow. And the most striking aspect of it all, this was not a story of starvation. Remains of horses, deer, and other animals were also found. In the same cave, food was plentiful. A calculation made in 2017 revealed that a human body provided approximately 125,000 calories, a bison provided 600,000 calories, and a mammoth provided 3 million. The human body was not an efficient source of food. This was a choice. Zigzag patterns had been carved into an arm bone found in the cave after the flesh had been completely stripped away. This wasn't a necessity. It was a ritual, and Gough's cave isn't the only example. Similar remains have been found in Germany, France, Spain, and Croatia. In different corners of the world, people had been doing this to one another for hundreds of thousands of years, not always just to survive, because somewhere along the line, they had decided that it held meaning, a love for rotten meat. The strangeness doesn't end there. Our ancestors didn't just eat fresh meat, they also ate rotten meat. When an animal was hunted, it wasn't possible to consume it all at once, so they buried it, hid it in caves, or left it in cold streams for days, weeks, sometimes even months. When they returned, the meat was maggot-infested, and the smell had become quite pungent, yet they still ate it. According to some researchers, they even preferred it this way. Rotten meat had been partially broken down by bacteria. It was easier to chew and easier to digest. Bacteria also produced the B vitamins the body needed, and this habit lives on at your table today. Every fermented food you love is, in fact, a controlled form of decay. Cheese, yogurt, sourdough bread, beer, wine, soy sauce, pickles. All of them are a slowed down and made safe version of the decay process. Your love for cheese didn't begin in a French dairy farm. It began 100,000 years ago on a savanna. While you were eating something much worse, you're still running the same program. Every craving you feel for fat, salt, sugar, or whatever is most abundant. It all comes from a program running inside you right now. Your body doesn't know how to be a brand or a refrigerator. It only knows this: eat what's abundant, eat what's rare, eat while you have the chance, because tomorrow, there might be nothing. When you open the fridge in the middle of the night, even though you're not hungry, you're actually running a 3-million-year-old program. That program is still scanning, still trying to keep you alive. But the world it was built for is long gone. If you were to drop a modern human into the world of 50,000 years ago, they'd most likely die within a few days. They wouldn't know how to find water. Half of the plants would seem like a complete mystery to them. They wouldn't be strong enough to chase an animal, climb a tree for honey, or break a bone for marrow. Even though they'd be surrounded by a landscape full of food, they'd starve to death because they couldn't see any of it. But if you were to place a human from 50,000 years ago in your kitchen, they'd think they'd stumbled into a god's pantry, a cold, sweet drink inside a metal container, bread baked by someone else, milk that stays fresh for weeks, fruits from places they'd never heard of, food that no one has to chase after. It would seem to them like the richest place they'd ever seen. Every human who has lived over the past 3 million years has been hungry, cold, and tired. You might be the first generation to break this cycle, and you may not even realize yet just how rare that is. What about you? When you open the fridge, are you really hungry, or is that 3-million-year-old instinct calling to you? Share your thoughts in the comments.